bad news is that the defense is even more banged up than any of us knew. Mike Tomlin made clear yesterday in his press conference that Alex Highsmith and Isaiah Loudermilk are both going to miss this weekend's game in Foxborough with high ankle sprains. He characterized Deshaun Elliott, Derek Harmon, and Joey Porter all as, quote, questionable at best. That's to say nothing of Patrick Queen and Darius Slay being banged up. That's the bad news. And the good news, I don't know. Give me a second to try to think of some. Good morning to you. Good Wednesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers presented by FanDuel. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates. The practice week, preparing for the Patriots, this Sunday at Gillette Stadium, begins this afternoon, and it'll begin with way more questions than answers having been addressed to date. And those questions probably couldn't have been anticipated by anybody entering this season. Chiefly, how has this defense been so brutally bad? I'm not here to revisit any remarks that anybody made in the summertime, whether it was the Mike Tomlin historic thing. Jalen Ramsey and others had some glowing assessments as well, because we're not debating here anything about top 5 or top 3 defenses. We are talking, well, I'll skip the adjectives and get right to the data. Steelers have now allowed 30-plus points through their first 2 games for the first time since 2002. They gave up 32 to the Jets. Along with 397 yards, they allowed 31 points to the Seahawks, along with 395 yards. These are strikingly similar outputs. Tomlin himself is the one who often uses the phrase, two's a trend. And what's most disturbing within those broader numbers is that there's no real pattern to how it's played out. You can want to blame it on the front line, but you're not going to get away with that because they're also getting scorched in the secondary. You can want to blame it on TJ Watt and Cam Hayward because they're the highest paid guys. They had contract fusses recently. But most of the evidence related to those two is that opponents are actively avoiding them and thus rendering them moot. It's the equivalent of baseball's intentional walk to a big home run hitter. And what I think might be the most unsettling thing of all, and by far the hardest to explain, is that every once in a while, you're going to see this defense, and you saw it this past Sunday against Seattle, get into a little bit of a groove. And I mean little bit. Like they'll have a couple of downs where they'll look like they're really aggressive, they're getting after it, and they'll force a 3rd and long, and you can finish the rest of that sentence for me. Because this defense is now allowing a 3rd down conversion rate of 46.4%. That's the 9th worst in the NFL. And a lot of those have been long conversions. This defense against the Seahawks gave up 18 plays of 10 or more yards. And 4 of those went for more than 20 yards. I've cited individuals. I've talked about what I feel is Tomlin's role in this. I've talked about what I feel is Terrell Austin's role in this. I've talked about the injuries. I've talked about some of the individual performances or lack thereof. I've talked about Peyton Wilson, Keanu Benton. Ramsey, for all the early splash he's delivered, to his credit, has also given up a lot of completions and a lot of yardage. Slay's done some of that too. Tomlin was asked yesterday, as you might imagine, what has to change?
We've got to be better. We got to strategize better. We got to play better. We got to divide the labor up a little better. Some of that's been challenging with some of the attrition, but that's what we're paid to do, and I'm excited about addressing it this week.
Yeah, he's excited. I'll bet he'd be a lot more excited if he wasn't looking at all these parentheses after players' names. I'm not going to pretend to be a football coach at any level, and I'm not going to pretend that my advice to this man should matter in any context. But if it were up to me, I'd look around that campus on the south side for a giant reset button, like one of those big red buttons. Remember they used to use in the Staples ads? I'd label it reset. Not panic, but reset. And from there, I'd have everybody, in particular, the positional coaches, the ones who are at ground level, so to speak, working with players on the principles, the foundations, the bottom line basics of tackling the football, of chasing it, of wanting it, of taking the right routes to it, and then of bringing it down. You are not, for a billion reasons, going to see the Steelers outsmart anybody Sunday in Foxborough. You're not going to see them out-scheme. You're not going to see them out-adjust. I actually, in this specific scenario, can empathize with Tomlin to an extent, because as he brought up himself yesterday, there were a lot more things that the Steelers wanted to do against Seattle's offense, but couldn't because they were putting players out there that they knew weren't going to fit with that. So fine, there are 3 full practices and there's a Saturday walkthrough. Strip the thing down, dumb it down if that's what you want to call it. And within that, separate the people who want to make tackles and who want to stuff the run from those who are just out there not shedding blocks and not getting anything done. It won't be pretty, it sure won't be perfect, but I'll tell you right now, it's got a heck of a lot better chance to succeed than anything we've seen these first 2 weeks. When we come back, J1Q. This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar. Football season's finally here. Time to check out the latest odds, futures, and win totals on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Think the Steelers are headed to the Super Bowl? Lock in your bets today. Whatever your game, FanDuel Sportsbook delivers the latest lines, futures, and specials so you can join in on all the action. Hey guys, if you're planning to see a Steelers game, use the Game Time app to get your tickets. You can snag new ticket deals before anyone if you set it into your app alerts. The app is easy to use. No surprise fees at checkout. You can see your seat view before buying, and you're getting legit tickets delivered on time. If you're not much of a planner, you can get last-minute deals on tickets right up to the start of the event. Lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app and enter the code DK Steelers into your app profile to get $20 off your first purchase. Today's J1Q comes from Paul Bieneman, who says, DK, Dick LeBeau used to line 9 guys up at the line of scrimmage, and the other team didn't know who was doing what. This team lines up the exact same way on every down, doesn't it? It's not exactly the same way, Paul, but I get what you're going for here. There's a lot of static looks. There's a lot of lack of motion. There's almost no element of surprise as related to the safeties specifically. And remember that that's the one thing that quarterbacks are looking at most often in trying to determine what they want to do. If you're showing the other team's quarterback a flat-footed safety consistently, that quarterback's going to feast. I don't care who it is. As I mentioned in the opening segment, this might not be the week to try to complicate things. I legitimately get that. I respect that part of it. People can use injuries as an excuse, but they're also a fact when they're in this kind of volume. And even going past that, you know, one of the running themes that I've had since training camp broke up and the Steelers moved all of their practices to the south side was that they need to build a foundation on both sides of the ball, but really all 3 phases. And they lack that. And they lack it in all 3 phases. We talk about the offense all the time. We're now talking about the special teams. not just because of Caleb Johnson's mistake, but in general, they haven't been great on kick returns, kick coverage, anything other than what Chris Boswell and Corliss Waitman have done. And defensively, you can't get more simple than the art of the standard tackle. And that's not happening. Paul, to try to work within the spirit of what you're asking, if Coach LeBeau were still at work, then he was facing a Drake May who's 23 years old, and although May has played well, he's still young, he's inexperienced, he's unproven. But what you would have is LeBeau overseeing, if you think about the better part of his illustrious tenure in Pittsburgh, a whole bunch of brainiacs out there who are get after it guys. Well, that's the best of both worlds from the player perspective, the very best, in my opinion, of any world from the coaching perspective. They would freak out the kid quarterback that they were facing just through their alignments, just through their disguises, just through Troy bouncing around back behind the line of scrimmage or 30 yards off the ball or wherever it is that Troy used his spidey sense to detect where things were going to happen. LeBeau and that defense would beat the kid quarterback before the ball was snapped. And I feel like going back to St. Vincent, there was a sentiment that because the Steelers had these names brought into the mix, Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay, and don't forget that now Jabril Peppers is going to be available sometime soon. You add those to the names that were already here, that you could have that type of defense. Well, that defense, that LeBeau defense, was formed over not years, but decades of continuity and peer pressure and expectation that was built upon real performance. This arrangement that we're seeing right now, I could argue even before the injuries, was going to take some time to come together, never mind being something at that level. So I'll reiterate, strip it down. Take the whole class back to kindergarten. Everybody, Cam, TJ, everybody. There are no exceptions when you're giving up this many points, this many yards. Identify your ugliest weaknesses, most of which I'll add here are right up the middle, right up the gut, running and passing, and go hard at those. Win those. At the very least, win those. Take some kind of stride forward. Apply the tourniquet. Stop the bleeding. We're going to have a double shot of Steelers today at 4 p.m. Eastern on the DK Pittsburgh Sports app. Download it now. That's free if you want the good version, the kind with no ads, the kinds where you can comment, the kinds where you can ask J1Qs. Email me directly. Do it this morning. DK@DKPittsburghSports.com. I will answer you myself and offer you a massive discount. See how easy that is? It's just like tackling.